Your word, O God, and your word only, be that which we sing and speak, be that which falls on our ears and lives in our hearts. For in your word we find you, and you are our rock and our redeemer. Amen. Amen. Before I preach a word, I want to say how honored I am by your rector's invitation to be with you tonight. I was with the folk at noon here, and I'm aware of all of the ways in which you, the people of God called to be St. Francis, are proclaiming the gospel in all kinds of ways. And it is a beautiful thing to be with you tonight. So, who is to blame for all of this? It's a bloody mess, and someone must be to blame. There are plenty of players to choose from. A lot of politics, a sense of revolution in the air, a certain soap opera style intrigue with a liberal dose of betrayal. It seems that everyone, and not just one person, is to blame for the death of Jesus of Nazareth. The theocrat, King Herod, did it, to be sure. But so did that crafty Roman governor, Pilate. Oh, yes, and the religious leaders. But so did the people. No segment of first century society is left off the hook of this gruesome story. So maybe we all did it. Maybe we're all to blame. That's certainly better than blaming the Jews, as our shameful history of anti-Semitism reminds us. And it's probably better than blaming God. We are, generally speaking, more inclined toward the idea that God planned this all along, that this horrible death appeared on the divine blueprints from the beginning. Neither option will do anymore. Neither blaming all of us, nor blaming God. And maybe these two options never worked, but especially not now in 2025. Especially not now in this moment when in parts of the world, including our own nation, political leaders have turned into despots, populist movements in which people are hunkering down and locking up the gates of their nation's borders, or telling lies to belittle others or to discount facts, or acting with malice and disregarding the dignity of other people. In the face of these realities, we can no longer afford to act like Job's friends. Remember Job and Job's friends? You must have sinned, Job. That's why all this bad stuff is happening to you. Or you're caught up in some divine, mysterious plan. For a very long time now, the Christian version of Job's friends have stood at the foot of the cross and tried to explain why Jesus had to suffer. Tried to locate a reason for the suffering. Tried to convict the guilty and exonerate the innocent. Tried to make all of this into a tidy package of cause and effect that will somehow make sense of what really is a senseless event. So no. The time for fixing blame is over. It is time to learn to grieve. There is no way of avoiding it. Today is about death. To skip too quickly from last night's memorial meal or to Sunday's new dawn is to forget about the brutality. Today, we are presented with a God who is not content to stay on the sidelines, who is not content with the role of divine spectator, with a God who is anything but dispassionate. Today, at least for a moment, we have to stop asking what the cross means for us, or who's to blame, or why it had to happen. And instead, ask what the cross means for Jesus and what it means for God. It means for Jesus and for God forsakenness and grief, abandonment and death. As God's people, it means to stop, at least for a moment, to stop and to grieve. We would rather not, of course. Some of us are already too acquainted with grief, if only for particular loved ones, which is plenty, or for a whole list of friends who have died too soon. What does not come easily, but with which we are getting experience, is collective grief. We're not taught how to do it, or more likely, we're taught how to deny it and repress it. But I think we have to acknowledge, and I think also celebrate, that there are moments, glimpses of our capacity to experience collective grief as well as action. Think of the Black Lives Matter movement, or a few years ago, the Me Too movement, or just 2 weeks ago, when people throughout the nation gathered to protest government's overreach in what feels to some of us like every aspect of life. All of those movements have helped us grieve and also act. Yet still, even with those examples, we're not great about feeling collective grief, and our theology hasn't helped us. Religious systems, including our own church, we say that Jesus had to suffer, Jesus had to die. Saying so simply makes it easier to find reasons for why others have to suffer, why others have to die, making the countless crucifixions of our world merely unfortunate but necessary cogs in the wheels of our lives. No. Today is about finding a focus for our collective grief as a people. And the music and the ritual are meant to help us, including hymns whose theology and language runs counter to the very thing I'm saying tonight. We can hold both. We can hold the tradition and the reality of today at the same time. There is no blame, only lament. Today is for looking with open eyes upon desolation and for hearing the cry rise up from a crucified world, my God, why have you forsaken me? And it's nothing to do with self-pity, for it's not just the world's voice or our own voice. It is God's voice. The mystery of the cross is the mystery of a God who suffers. In a few moments, Douglas will place in front of the altar a wooden cross. You will be invited during the singing, either while the choir sings or when we all are singing hymns, to come forward and to touch it or stand nearby it or to kiss it, to offer devotion, not because we celebrate the cross in itself, but because we acknowledge that God meets us here. The question is not why, but where. Where is God? The answer from the cross is clear. God is here. God is here in the world's suffering and in the world's pain, in our suffering and in our pain. We don't grieve just to grieve, but in order to remember that this is not how things ought to be, that things could and should be different. To remember the suffering of Jesus and to hear the cry of a crucified world is to remember that God has promised otherwise. the late, and I think the great, Secretary of State, Madeleine Albright, only about a year before she died, spoke at length and in public about the 1994 genocide in Rwanda, and particularly about our own country's missteps, to put it mildly, before, during, and after the genocide. And this is what Secretary Albright said. Where forgetfulness rules, the dead are killed once again. In painful memories, hope is preserved. Let me say that again. Where forgetfulness rules, the dead are killed once again. In painful memories, hope is preserved. On Good Friday, we cannot forget, for in this pain, God gives us what we need to preserve hope. In the name of that God, amen. Amen.